it's become repertoire for us, and that's in a way quite rare for a large British chorus. Why have you taken the trouble to make sure that we do it every season now?
We're doing the Brahms Requiem more or less every season at the moment because I want the choir to be able to grow on a repertoire where we can get to a particular stage and do it well, and then say, okay, now you know it, and now we have this wonderful German coach, Norbert Mein, and now your German has got to a particular stage, let's take the same text and the same music and see if we can go to another stage. After all, orchestras do this all the time. I mean, they play Beethoven symphonies and Brahms symphonies so they're coming out of their ears, and they do it better and better as a result. And a symphonic chorus is inevitably going to have certain pieces, Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, Mahler 2, Mahler 3, to a lesser extent Mahler 8, the planets for the women, and a number of these pieces that come up time and time again because they're part of belonging to an orchestra. And also for a symphonic chorus, that is really the definition of the difference between a symphonic chorus and a choral society, because a choral society rarely has to do these symphonic pieces where the choir is an addition. And that would also be the case with ballet scores by Ravel and Roussel, and the more extraordinary pieces by Stravinsky and so on. So the Brahms is so good for training sound.
Mm-hmm. So you talk a lot about sound in our rehearsals. Why is it particularly with this piece we work so much on sound, do you think?
Well, we work a lot with sound in this piece because we will carry that over into everything else we do. Let's think about Beethoven's Ninth Symphony that comes up very often. It's much less easy to work on sound in that because the tessitura is so high, it's so punishing. It's better to have done it on a much friendlier piece and then apply that work to Beethoven. And you know, if we do the Missa Solemnis by Beethoven, or Mahler's Eighth Symphony, which is in preparation at the moment, these are much longer, much more demanding, and in a way you spend nearly all your time correcting the German and making sure people know when to come in and whether it's loud or quiet or where they're going to find their notes from or whatever it is. And rarely do you have the time to polish to the level that we are on the Brahms. So it's the thing that helps everything else grow. I'd love this choir to have lots of different sounds. Now that's obvious. A sound based on the German language is going to be very different from a sound based on English or French or Russian or whatever. Clear. So that is to a certain extent a question of language coaching. But it's much more than that. The Germans sing in a different way from the Italians in a different way from the British. So this choir is absolutely set up to do the most fantastic work on English language repertoire. I guess this choir can jump in with both feet and do Belshazzar's Feast or Dream of Gerontius as well as anybody. The German sound, particularly for the tenors, where German tenors mix falsetto with their chest voice, or actually the baritones do the same, and the altos who have to be able to move between quite a high tessitura, more or less singing like second sopranos, but then mix with the tenors, and sopranos to have great transparent, light transparency. Is a different sound, and I would love us to be able to do German repertoire really well. And German repertoire is at the centre of an orchestra's repertoire, and it will be at the centre of Simon Rattle's repertoire, coming from the Berlin Philharmonic to us. So it's terribly important. He's had a professional German choir for 15 years, that we don't disappoint him. And then, you know, when we do Russian repertoire, of course, language coaching, but you know, one sings with much more body and much more attack and so on. And then with Gianandrea Noseda doing Italian repertoire, well, you sort of read it in his face, but we need to be vocally prepared to be able to react to the gesture of a conductor. And that is also something that sets a symphonic chorus apart from however good an a cappella choir or a choral society, because every few days, every few weeks, we're working with a different set of gestures and a different sort of repertoire. And so that's terribly important to the work that we are currently doing.
So when we rehearse this, you talk quite a lot about composers earlier than Brahms. You tell us to sing like we're singing Handel or Haydn. You just talk a little bit about that in relation to the Brahms.
The Brahms is an extraordinary piece because Brahms himself was a choir conductor, and he was therefore very busy doing Renaissance music and Baroque music and so on. He knew his music history inside out. He knew his Handel, his Bach, his Jacob Handel, who is a sort of equivalent of, for us, as William Byrd, for example. He knew his Palestrina, he knew Beethoven, Mozart and Haydn. And what's rather extraordinary about this piece is that it comes relatively early in Brahms' output. But having said that, Brahms is a relative late beginner, so he'd spent a long time studying. And then he wrote a piece that undoubtedly sounds like Brahms and nothing else than Brahms. But if you look at the music, you can see, that transition, he simply got from Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. Or this fugue is an extension of something that comes from the Mozart Requiem. Or this fugue is just like something out of Handel, and so on and so on. Chorales in the background being like Bach, and so on. So we have to be sensible for what was going on in Brahms's head. It's just paid off dividends wonderfully because Fabio Luisi is doing one of the big double fugues very lightly, and we are able to do it because we've had these conversations. Everyone went, oh yeah, we know that, we're supposed to sing this lightly like Handel, and immediately did it. So that's part of what my job is, to make sure that everyone has a background which is much more than just knowing the notes, that we really do know what every word means, that we know what the background of the music is, when it was written, how it was put together, how the piece was constructed, so we can bring big knowledge to it.
Mm-hmm.